The father of the bride was lying flat on his back under a shuttle bus, in a rented tuxedo, in the gravel, while 300 wedding guests watched from the terrace above him. The groom's father stood over him with a champagne glass in his hand and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Get up, Curtis. You're embarrassing my son." Kurt Maddox did not get up. He said, "Nobody gets on this bus. It's a 40-minute drive to the hotel and these people are tired." Sterling. Kurt slid out from under the bus, and his hands were black to the wrist, and his voice was very calm. "Your driver is about to take 38 people down a 2.5-mile hill at a 9% grade. And this bus has no brakes. Before we go on, tell me in the comments which country you're watching from tonight. I'd love to know how far this one travels." Because 11 hours earlier, Kurt Maddox had woken up at 4 in the morning, sat on the edge of his bed in a house that was too quiet, and practiced saying one sentence out loud. Asterisk, "to my daughter, who is the best thing I have ever been part of." Asterisk. He practiced it 9 times. He never got to say it. Kurt Maddox was 54 years old and he owned a 2-bay garage on Reynolds Street with his name painted on the window. He had raised his daughter alone since she was 7. Dana had died 19 years ago, on a Tuesday, on Route 9, at mile marker 12. A truck's brake line had failed on a downhill grade. The driver was 23 and had reported the fault twice, and the company that owned the truck had signed it off both times without touching it. Kurt had been under a Buick when the phone rang. He never finished that Buick. The car sat in Bay 2 for 4 months before the owner finally came and towed it away himself, and never sent a bill. After that, Kurt did something he never told a single living person about. He checked the brakes. Every car his daughter ever rode in. Her friends' mothers' minivans. The school bus, twice a year, in the district lot on a Saturday, with a flashlight, without asking anyone's permission. Her first car. Her prom date's car. He did it at 6 in the morning while the kid was still asleep, and put everything back exactly as it was, and never mentioned it. 19 years. Every vehicle. Every time. He never told Callie. He didn't want her growing up afraid of the world. He just wanted her to come home. Callie Maddox grew up anyway, smart, funny, stubborn as a bolt seized with rust. She put herself through nursing school. And 2 years ago she met a man named Reed Ashford at a hospital fundraiser, and last spring he asked her to marry him on the pier at the lake. Kurt liked Reed. That was the strange part. Reed was decent. Reed called him, sir, in a way that wasn't sarcastic, and he showed up once with a broken alternator and actually wanted to learn. It was Reed's family that was the problem. The Ashfords owned Ashford Motorworks, 9 luxury dealerships across 3 states. Sterling Ashford had inherited 4 of them from his father and was extremely proud of building the other 5. Kurt had been saving for his daughter's wedding since she was 11. $200 a month, into a credit union account he never touched. By the time Callie got engaged there was $104,000 in it. Then the Ashfords helped. They moved the venue to Bellamy Ridge Country Club, where they were members. They tripled the guest list. They brought in a planner from the city. The number stopped being $100,000 and started being $312,000, and every time Kurt tried to talk about it Sterling waved his hand and said, "Don't worry about it, Curtis, we've got it handled." Kurt did not want it handled. So in February, without telling anyone, Kurt Maddox sold his garage. The building, the lifts, the diagnostic rig, the land. 31 years of his life. He signed the paperwork and leased the back 2 bays from the new owner so he could keep working, and he wired the money to the planner's account, and he told her one thing. Don't tell the Ashfords. He didn't do it out of pride. He did it because Dana had once said that the only thing she wanted for their daughter was for her to never feel like she owed anybody for her own happiness. Sterling Ashford spent the next 5 months telling people at the club that he was throwing his son a hell of a wedding. The day itself was beautiful. That's the thing nobody tells you. It was a gorgeous September Saturday, gold light coming sideways through the oaks, and Callie came down the aisle on her father's arm in her mother's veil. Kurt held it together until she squeezed his elbow and whispered, "Breathe, Dad." He almost lost it right there. Then he sat down, and the day slowly turned into something else. The Ashfords had put him at table 9. Not the head table. Table 9, near the service door, with Reed's cousins from out of state. The photographer skipped him twice. At the cocktail hour a woman in pearls asked him what he did, and when he said he was a mechanic, she said, "Oh, how useful," and turned around and did not turn back. And when Kurt walked toward the terrace steps to find his daughter, Sterling Ashford's assistant put a hand on his arm and said, "Sir, the family photos are happening right now, could you give them a few minutes?" The family photos. Kurt went and stood by the parking lot for a while, in a rented tuxedo, on the day he'd spent 19 years working toward. In the breast pocket of that tuxedo, where a pocket square should have been, was a small rectangle of navy blue cloth. It was a name patch. Dana had stitched it onto his work shirt the week they opened the garage. She'd done it herself, badly, in gold thread, and the C in Kurt was crooked and she'd refused to redo it. When the shirt finally wore out, he cut the patch off and kept it. It had been in his pocket at Callie's kindergarten graduation. It had been in his pocket when she got her nursing pin. It was in his pocket now. At 3:40 in the afternoon, Sterling Ashford stood up to give the toast. He was very good at it. He was charming and warm and he got 2 real laughs in the first minute. He talked about Reed as a boy. He talked about the Ashford name, and what it meant, and about legacy. And then he found Kurt at table 9. Now, I want to say something about Callie's father. 300 heads turned. Curtis has been a real trooper today. Drove the golf cart. Helped the boys with the cooler. Very good with his hands. A ripple of laughter. I mean that as a compliment. Kurt sat perfectly still. "You know," Sterling said, warming to it, swirling his glass, "there are 2 kinds of men in this world. Some men build things." A pause. He'd rehearsed the pause. "And some men crawl under them." The laugh that got was bigger. "Both are necessary. Both are necessary." Sterling raised his glass. "So let's hear it for Curtis. Somebody's got to keep the wheels turning." 300 people applauded a man in a rented tuxedo at table 9, and most of them genuinely thought they were being kind. Kurt raised his glass about 2 inches, and set it back down. Across the room, Callie Maddox had gone completely white. She started to stand up, and her father caught her eye across 300 people and shook his head once. Asterisk not today. Not your day, asterisk. She sat back down and did not look at her new father-in-law for the rest of the meal. At 6:20, the reception began winding toward the send-off, and the club rolled out the shuttle to run guests down to the hotel in town. Bellamy Ridge sits on a ridge. That's the entire point of it. The access road drops 2.5 miles at a 9% grade with 4 switchbacks, and there is a runoff gravel bed at the third one, because the road has needed a runoff gravel bed since 1974. The shuttle was a 28-foot bus that the club leased. It idled by the gravel turnaround with its door open while 38 guests queued up, mostly older, mostly holding their shoes. Kurt Maddox walked past it on his way to find his daughter. And he stopped. He didn't know why at first. That's how it works after 31 years, the sound gets to you before the thought does. He stood there for a second, listening to a bus idle. Then he walked around to the driver's window. How long's it been running? The driver was a kid, maybe 22, named Nestor Alvarado. Like 40 minutes. They told me to keep the AC on for the guests. Do me a favor. Press the brake pedal. All the way down. Don't start moving. Nestor pressed it. Kurt watched the pedal go down. And down. And keep going, soft and slow, all the way to the floor, like stepping into wet sand. Kurt's whole body went cold. Again. Nestor pressed it again. Same thing. When did you come up the hill today? About 1. I brought the band up. You ride the brakes on the way up? No, coming down is what. The kid stopped. I brought the band up from the hotel this morning too. And the caterers. That's 3 trips down. 3 descents on a 9% grade in one afternoon, with a full load, on a hot day. Kurt took off his jacket, folded it once, handed it to Nestor, and got down on the gravel in a rented tuxedo and slid underneath the bus. He was under there 90 seconds. He came out with brake fluid on his fingers and held them up in the light. It wasn't the honey color it should have been. It was dark, almost black, and there was a wet weeping line where the flex hose met the caliper on the rear passenger side, a hose that had been rubbing against a bracket long enough to wear a groove into itself. Boiled fluid. A weeping line. And a pedal that went to the floor. That bus had maybe one hard stop left in it. Maybe. And it was about to carry 38 people, including the bride's 91-year-old grandmother, down a 2.5-mile hill. That's when Sterling Ashford came down the terrace steps with a champagne glass, saw his daughter-in-law's father lying under a bus in front of 300 wedding guests, and said the sentence he would think about for the rest of his life. Get up, Curtis. You're embarrassing my son. Kurt slid out. Nobody gets on this bus. It's a 40-minute drive and these people are tired. Sterling. Your driver is about to take 38 people down a 2.5-mile hill at a 9% grade. And this bus has no brakes. Sterling laughed. He actually laughed. It's a leased coach. It's inspected. Nestor, get them loaded. Nestor Alvarado did not move. Everyone noticed that. A 22-year-old kid on an hourly wage looked at the man who signed the club's contracts, and then looked at the man with brake fluid on his hands, and stayed exactly where he was. Nestor, Sterling said, sharper. Sir, Nestor said, the pedal went to the floor. Sterling turned back to Kurt, and his voice dropped into something meaner and quieter. You've had a difficult day. I understand that. But you are not going to stand in a parking lot and lecture me about vehicles. And Kurt Maddox, who had said maybe 40 words all day, said. Then don't take my word for it. Get in and drive it 20 feet and stop it. Sterling stared at him. 20 feet, Kurt said. Flat ground. You'll know in 3 seconds. And if I'm wrong, I'll get back under it and stay there till the last guest is gone, and you can tell everybody how right you were. Some things are impossible to walk away from in front of 300 people. Sterling Ashford handed his glass to somebody, climbed up into the driver's seat of a 28-foot bus in a $4,000 suit, put it in drive, let it roll about 15 feet across the flat gravel, and pushed the brake pedal. The bus did not stop. It kept rolling, slow, but rolling, and Sterling stamped on the pedal a second time and a third time, and the pedal went to the floor, and the bus rolled another 12 feet and drifted into the low stone wall at the edge of the turnaround with a soft, awful crunch. On flat ground. At walking speed. Nobody on that terrace made a sound. Sterling Ashford sat in the driver's seat with both hands on the wheel and did not get out for a long time. Because he was doing the same arithmetic every single person in that parking lot was doing. Flat ground, walking speed, a stone wall. 9% grade. 2.5 miles. 4 switchbacks. 38 people. When he finally climbed down, his face had no color left in it at all. "How did you know?" he said. It wasn't really a question. "The idle," Kurt said. "It's leaning on a soft pedal, so the engine note sits about 50 RPM low. You hear it for 30 years, you hear it." "No." Sterling's voice cracked slightly. "How did you know to check?" And Kurt Maddox looked at him for a moment, and then he reached into the breast pocket of a rented tuxedo and took out a small navy patch with crooked gold letters on it. "My wife died on a downhill grade 19 years ago," he said. "Brake line." It had been reported twice. He turned the patch over in his fingers. "I have checked the brakes on every vehicle my daughter has ever ridden in since she was 7 years old. Every school bus. Every friend's car. Her prom date Civic, at 6 in the morning, without telling him." He put the patch back in his pocket. "She's never known. I didn't want her to be afraid of cars." He looked up at the terrace, where 300 people in evening clothes had gone completely silent, and where his daughter was standing at the top of the steps in her mother's veil with both hands over her mouth. "That's the whole trick, Sterling," Kurt said. "There isn't one. I just never stopped looking." Then he wiped his hands on the inside of his jacket, because it was rented and he'd already lost the deposit, and he walked up the steps to his daughter. The county sheriff's office came out that night. So did the leasing company. The inspection report was ugly. The flex hose had been flagged as monitor on 2 consecutive services and never replaced. The fluid had not been changed in 4 years, which is why it boiled. And the vendor who had been servicing the Bellamy Ridge fleet at a very attractive rate for 6 years was Ashford Motorworks Commercial Division. Not Sterling personally. He hadn't known. That was, in a way, the worst part. Nobody had done anything dramatic. A service writer had checked a box. A manager had approved a discount package that skipped the fluid flush. Somebody had decided a hose could wait 1 more cycle. Nobody had meant to kill 38 people at a wedding. That's usually how it works. Sterling Ashford pulled the commercial contract himself the following week and paid for a full independent inspection of every leased vehicle at the club, out of his own pocket. He fired nobody. He said publicly that firing a service writer would have been the cheapest thing he could possibly do, and that he was not interested in the cheapest thing anymore. Nestor Alvarado, the 22-year-old who refused to move the bus, was hired that November as the assistant fleet coordinator at Ashford Motorworks. He runs their whole commercial inspection program now. He is very unpopular with vendors, which is the point. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, the wedding planner sent Sterling a routine copy of the final invoice, the way planners do. He read it 3 times. Then he drove 40 minutes out to Reynolds Street and stood in the doorway of a 2-bay garage with a stranger's name newly painted on the window, and watched a 54-year-old man in coveralls run a compression test on a Corolla. "You sold your shop," Sterling said. Kurt didn't look up. "Yep. For my son's wedding. For my daughter's wedding." Sterling stood there. "I stood up in front of 300 people," he said slowly, "and I told them there are 2 kinds of men. Some men build things. And some men crawl under them." Kurt kept working. "You crawled under a bus in a rented tuxedo," Sterling said, "and you're the only reason I'm not burying 38 people. Including my son." He put an envelope down on the workbench. "That's the 312,000. It should never have come out of you and we both know it." He paused. "Buy your building back." Kurt looked at the envelope for a while. "I'll take it," he said. "Not because I need to be right. Because Callie shouldn't spend her marriage knowing her dad sold his life to sit at table 9. "Table 9, Sterling repeated. He closed his eyes. "God. Kurt wiped his hands. You want to make it right, do one thing for me. Anything. Learn her mother's name. Kurt nodded at a photograph taped inside the toolbox lid, a woman laughing on the day they opened the shop, holding a shirt with a crooked gold patch on it. It was Dana. Nobody at that wedding said it once. Not one time, all day. Sterling Ashford stood in a garage on Reynolds Street and cried in front of a man he had publicly humiliated 4 weeks earlier. Then he said, Dana. They rebuilt the garage that spring. Same building, same 2 bays, new lift. Kurt kept the old sign and hung it inside over the workbench, because the new one out front says Maddox and daughter. Callie's a nurse. She does not turn wrenches. But she was the one who insisted, and Kurt has never once argued with her about anything she was that serious about. She knows now. About the school buses, and the prom date Civic, and all 19 years of it. She found out in a parking lot with 300 people listening, which is not how he ever wanted her to find out. She asked him once why he never told her. He said, because you'd have thanked me. And then you'd have started checking behind me. And I wanted you to get to be a kid who just got in the car. Every September, on their anniversary, the Ashfords have dinner at Kurt's house. Sterling brings the wine and does the dishes, badly. Nestor comes when he can. And there is a small navy patch with crooked gold letters, framed now, hanging in the front room where you can see it from the door. Here's the thing I keep thinking about. Sterling Ashford wasn't a monster. He was just a man who had decided, without ever really deciding, that the value of a person was visible from across a room. He looked at a mechanic in a rented tuxedo and saw somebody useful. Somebody good with his hands. Somebody who keeps the wheels turning. He did not see 19 years of a man on his back in the dark under vehicles that weren't his, checking brake lines nobody asked him to check, for a daughter who never knew he was doing it. You cannot see that from across a room. You can't see it at all. So when you find yourself sizing somebody up by what they're wearing or what they do, and everybody does it, everybody, just remember that you are looking at maybe 2% of a person. The other 98% is usually the part that would save your life. So tell me, have you ever watched somebody get looked down on, and then watched them turn out to be the most important person in the room? Tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story got you, subscribe. There's a new one here every week, and I think the next one might be your favorite.